Good. Oh, every time. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I apologise for that screech. It's every time I forget to turn the speaker off. How are you? Very nice to see you. Welcome to another Listen with Vobes. And I've probably shocked you all again with that very loud thing. Beg your pardon. Sorry about that. Anyway, yes, Listen with Vobes. We are reading The Peep Show by Walter Wilkinson. We will probably finish that today, probably quite quickly. So that's all good. It's the 18th of February 2021, and it is 4 o'clock here in the UK. Very nice to see you. Dave Yved says, tank top. Yes, very good of you to notice. This is one of Mary Hammond's very lovely tank tops. She sent me this actually out of some wool that she had, and she said, had some old wool, because I'd asked her to make me some tank tops so I can wear them under my blue Harris tweed jacket, so slightly thinner. This is for the spring collection, don't you know? And all I need is a pipe, and actually I found a pipe in an old drawer, sort of a pipe. Not that I smoke a pipe, but did make me feel like I ought to smoke a pipe. Yes, so I thought I'd put it on to show you, but I've got one coming, and I may order a couple of them for the spring collection, the spring and autumn probably. Summer may have to have something else because it'll be warmer. It may just be shirts, of course, at that point. But we'll worry about that when the time comes. But yes, it's very nice. There we are. Look, you can have a quick model. La 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 la, which is all good fun. Is that what they call in the US a tank top? It is a tank top. Yes, we call them tank tops. I don't know what everybody else calls them. Oh, look, nice new tank top. So it's lovely, isn't it? It's very pleasant. Very 1940s, don't you think? I said, puff, puff. I must go and get my pipe. And I'll have to get it. Anyway, turned out nice. Just back from a bike ride, says Dudley Sawyer. Yes, I'd just been down into the park, actually, for a little stroll around, which was very nice. So there we go. Everybody's all there. What ho, Vobsters, says Andrew Norris. Hello to everybody. Let's have a quick hello. And we will crack on with everything. So hello to lovely Julia, to Turbo Stream, to Holly and Co, to Justine Jones, to Billabong O'Neill, to Audrey Forbes Hamilton, to Jen Colley, to Davy Vad, to Philip and Mary Hammond. Miss Halfreds, I call her now, because she knitted for Halfreds. Harrods. Did I say Halfred? I said Halfreds. I don't know what Halfreds. It's like Halfords and Harrods combined. Miss Harrods. It's not Halfreds. What's Halfreds? I don't know what that is. Sorry, Mary. That's outrageous. Michael White, hello to you. To Steve G. To, I think I've said Holly and Co. Anne H. To Lee Lawson, Justine Jones, Linda Kane, and many others, I'm sure, who are coming in. Dudley Sawyer, Edward Moulding, to Skilt, Andrew Norris, and Sensible Paul. There we go. How marvellous is that? Fantastic. And I have my lemon and ginger just here. Now, we're going to finish our book, and we're going to get on with that in a second. A publisher got in touch with me the other day, and I'm still not quite sure why they got in touch with me. It's nothing to do with this, and it's nothing to do with reading the book, but I think because I, in the past, have made a podcast or something about, and maybe the author knows of me, but I was asked, the author asked the publisher to send them, for the publisher to send me a new book that's just been published at the end of last year. And it's a very lovely book, Mad Jack, and it's about John Mad Jack Fuller. Beautiful book, The Many Lives of John Fuller, the Squire of Brightling. I've not got over to, it's in East Sussex, I've not gone over to with the Bald Explorer. Every intention to. I did do something in a video some time ago called Oddball Eccentrics, which but it's a lovely book, but it's got these rather beautiful drawings in illustrations and things. Beautiful sort of watercolours, I think they are, of his follies. He was known for his follies, and he was look at this, beautiful, just so very, very beautiful. So thank you very much. And here's another one. Look at that. Just beautifully illustrated the history of Mad Jack, who was a politician. Well, I'll just read you the back of this. Almost 200 years after his death, John Mad Jack Fuller is most remembered as a typical English eccentric, a wealthy 18th century squire who built whimsical follies around his Sussex estate. Local legend has it that Mad Jack sits inside his mysterious pyramid tomb at a table set with roast chicken and a bottle of port. Curious stories such as this overshadows Fuller's philanthropy even, and patronage of the arts and sciences, while his arrest in the House of Commons is better known than the details of his long political career. This book delves behind the myths and the tall tales to examine more closely the life and times of this colourful, charismatic and often contradictory character. So it's a beautiful book. I shall look forward to reading that, actually, and go and make a series of videos, I think, based on that. It's by Annette Lloyd Thomas. And I did a podcast with a young lady about 15 years ago, maybe more now. And I wondered if it was her, but I don't think it was her. But anyway, I just thought I would share that with you. So that came in the post today. Do they want us to review it? Do they want you to review it? No, it was just the author sent it, said, could you send a copy to Richard Vobes? And they got in touch. They said, is this your address? I said, yes. So I wrote back. I said, it's just arrived. I said, I'll going to do some things about it and I'll plug it. And what I thought was, maybe there's a little advantage here. We could get in touch with some publishers and say, look, we run this thing where we read books, and maybe we could get some books that are newly published, plug them in the show, read various passages, and then see if we can get discounts on the books, a healthy discount to sell on. It could work, couldn't it? It could be an interesting thing. So maybe that is something that I can go back and say, hey, look, we do this reading thing. It's about heritage, landscape and nature and, related travel. And so it may be, I mean, obviously I can't read any of this now. It's newly published. Look at that. It's just so, the pictures in it are just, absolutely beautiful, stunning stuff. And that we might be able to not publish it. Hang on. There we are. Look, that's a bit better, isn't it? I've been to that round tundra. I've been there. I've done a podcast from in there. But yeah, it's a lovely book. Anyway, so that's what went through my mind, that this book club could develop into something a little bit more than just reading old books. Talking of that, I've been doing some stuff with Christopher Taylor's book here, The Fields in the English Language, looking at old fields and things. So that came in. I've been reading that avidly. And another book by... trouble with me is once I get into an author, he was a leading archaeologist. So he's got another one here called Roads and Tracks of Britain, which came also today, along with, which I know is a bit further afield, the Cambridgeshire Cambridgeshire Landscape by Christopher Taylor. So that... which is interesting to read. Anyway, so I've just waffled on a little bit. You could do the book I co-wrote, says Lee Lawson. Yes, there we go. How about that? That would be interesting, wouldn't it? We could do that. I mean, I'm sure that there is merit in promoting books. People love all that sort of stuff. They want free publicity, says Lee Lawson. Yes, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. So... we just want to get, sorry, a bit of, don't know what that was, bit of lemon, I think. You could surely read extracts, ask the publishers, says Andrew Norris. Yes, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. I thought we could go back and ask them. But of course, in reading the extracts, it would be nice to get a discount for the viewers. So people watching it can get, I mean, that retails, it says on there, for 25 quid. Well, if you could get it retailing for 15, knock a tenner off for, you know, have a limited number of sort of, I don't know, 20 or 30. You put in this code. I don't know how it would work. It's only, you know, off the top of my head, but it could be a thing. Anyway, that's just a bit of food for thought, ladies and gentlemen. Food for thought, like a book club, says Justine Jones. There we go. I wish it was to be read out because it would be interesting. Is I Calrote similar to I Claudius, says Dave Yvette. Yeah, probably. You need to make something out of it too, Richard. Well, yes, of course. Well, it's all just part of the overall brand at the moment. The overall brand is that we try and get as many people interested in the general thing, and they send tons of money. Some American has sent me $11 million, according to some rubbish that somebody... But I've never seen it, never actually materialised. So yesterday I was rich, today I'm back to being impecunious. So we will carry on and ply our trade here with the Peep Show. Now, we've only got a few pages to go, which is why I've taken the liberty of eating up 12 minutes. You're also available for audiobooks. Yes, that's true. I am. Audiobooks, I don't think they pay very much. And I did do an audiobook once. I really did, here. And it was hard work because you can't let it go without any mistake. You can't do it the way I'm doing it, where it's all relaxed and then some days I'm in a, you know. The worst part about it was, for the author, I don't know why she asked me to do it, is there were a number of Scottish characters, and I did the most appalling Scottish accent you've ever heard. But needs must as the devil drives, and I did it, and she was pleased, and she paid not a huge sum for the work, because you record, I mean, you read it so you know it, then you record it, and you've got all the mistakes, and you go over all the mistakes. Then you had to edit it and edit all the mistakes, so it sounds flawless. And then send it off. And it's so time-consuming. Anne H says, did you ever get your package? Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did get my package. Thank you. I had to think about that. I did. I mean, it was only some envelopes and a notebook. It's a lovely notebook. It's like I'll have to show it to you next time because it's in the other room. And a ream of paper. For, you know, writing on. Anyway, thinking about, that 11 million landed in my account, says Turbo Stream. Yes, would you look after it for me? Shall we crack on? I can't remember what he was on about. No sooner had I cleared the village. Oh, yes, he's got into Somerset levels, hasn't he? That's right. The fields were as flat as billiard tables. The dividing ditches were straight, the rows of willows were straight, and the road was straight, and being very level, I was able, at all events, to travel quickly, going forward expectantly into this change of scene. It was practically certain now that somewhere ahead an adventure was awaiting the Peep Show. Here in a field stood a monument in commemoration of King Alfred, who had hidden in the forest which had existed there. In other fields there had once stood a monastery built by him, and suddenly, away over the flat country between the willows, I saw a strange Sugarloaf Hill, a complete green cone with a grey church perched on its summit. A little later I passed a few poor cottages, where shy people sat in low doorways, weaving ossia baskets, as the people wove baskets in and out before Alfred's time. Ossia, is it ossia? Ossia? O-I-S-E-R. Consulting the map again, my one link with modern times, I read the names of King's Sedgemoor and the Isle of Athelney. I was no longer in Somersetshire. What? I was certainly in the land of history books. The spirit of the past stirred me strangely, and I began to feel that abbots and monks, armoured barons on horseback, and long-haired kings were really in existence and might appear at any moment. In the afternoon I came to another Sugarloaf Hill with another early English church on its summit. The road went about this hill, and as I followed it round I nearly twisted my neck in the effort to keep my eyes on this fascinating monument. This was a hill to look at. This was a hill and a church with history. Why, one could paint a picture, or compose a poem, or make a picture postcard, or preach a lecture as dull as ditch water on such a hill as that. At all events, I resolved to study the matter the next time I came within reach of books. The strange plain came to an end, and I wandered up and down the hills again. The country was spacious and lonely, and the villages too small to think of performing in them. The old houses and the wide roadway at Street confirmed the feeling that I was travelling deeper and deeper into the past, and I felt myself be quite a medieval figure, a shower of poppets and moppets, of motions and miracle plays, as I walked into the streets of Glastonbury, the ancient Isle of Avalon. Who shall say that a spirit did not lead me on? Something carried me through the town, past the priory, the abbot's kitchen, the old Pilgrim's Inn, and the High Street, into Chilkwell Street, and out of that strange high hill, the Tor, yet another Sugarloaf crowned with yet another ancient church. Standing at the foot of this sacred hill is a large grey stone building, not all of which is ancient, but which for all is strong and high and mighty, like a castle with its many windows looking down into a paved courtyard where silver fountains tinkle. The Peep show, feeling quite small and frivolous, pulled up through these big gates into this courtyard, and at once miraculously found itself... I'm sorry, that sentence is weird again. The Peep show, feeling quite small and frivolous, pulled through the big gates into this courtyard, and at once miraculously found itself being welcomed sympathetically by the lady of the castle. Here was no questions as to business and no dramatic advice to buy a motor car. Here were no fiddling questions about rents and permissions to perform. We were welcomed as strolling bards, as troubadours. We were an entertainment, and here in the castle were guests to be entertained. We were accepted naturally in ragged coat and dusty shoes, for it was seen at once that we were knights sworn to hard living, to simplicity and poverty. We were fed, and in less time than it takes in this telling, this weather-beaten, unkempt showman, trying to hide his rough shoes and hobnails under the chair, found himself in one of the castle rooms, seated on tapestries, surrounded by a gay and courtly gathering of knights and ladies, listening the while to a learned discourse, the which rang the names of the King Arthur, of Sir Galahad, and of the romance of the Grail. And as I am a true knight, my brain began to reel, and I was rushing out of the town to see if the 20th century existed, if only I could still buy gold flake cigarettes in the shops. But from the castle we wandered in a body to the grounds, where we looked into the deeps of the Chalice Well, the old blood well, to whose healing waters pilgrims had flocked for countless years, and which, it is said, sprang from the Holy Grail itself. Now we were looking into ancient stone baths, or drinking the sacred water as it gushed from golden rocks, or wandering over the hillside where the originators of the Glastonbury, the monks of Joseph of Arimathea, had lived as hermits in huts. The past rose up on all sides like an enchanted thicket and held us all in thrall within those castle walls. The lovely Julia and I went and had a look at the Chalice Well some years ago now. Anon, the lady of the castle moved to the banqueting hall and let cry a great feast, and well ye may wit that there was all manner of meat plenteously and right good cheer. To the long tables of this feast came pilgrims from the world over. Unto this feast came knights from the north and the south, and there were fair damsels from America and elsewhere in plenty. Also there came unto this feast a learned knight from Switzerland, and another from the University of Liverpool, and he was a young man. And I'll warrant you that shabby knight, the Peep showman, was there jostling his jostle at the board among all the ladies fair. In time the tables were cleared and removed, and said showman did set up his blue theatre in that great hall, where the rafters lost themselves in dim shadows. The guests took their seats, and in proper courtly style the staffs from the kitchens, the bedchamber and office were called in. The lady of the castle introduced the Peep show. A hush came down on the audience as they looked at me expectantly, and I knew that the great test had come. I trembled, and my 5 wits deserted me. Here I was, suddenly confronted with an audience of highbrows. The lady of the castle herself, a poetess and famous dramatist. Here were skilled artists and craftsmen, professors of literature, learned doctors and philosophers. I had become accustomed to children and village audiences, but before this array of intellect, before these sophisticated critics habituated to careful compositions, I quailed for my little puppets. This audience would expect something literary. They would demand old miracle plays, or something from the Greek, or a play composed by someone with a foreign name, or a folk play from the Chinese, or certainly something Italian. And all I had to offer was fat old Martha, much the worse for wear, falling out of her window, and, with the help of some squeaky music, dancing with John Barleycorn. This would be followed by a boxing match, a patently childish scene with magic chest, and a ghost play, which it is true was to be some day performed in graceful verse, but which at present pursued its course in a very colloquial prose. I turned from hot to cold. I repented feverishly for all those valuable moments that I had wasted on the road. Why had I spent so much time reading newspapers? Why had I cooked myself such luxurious repasts of minestra da magra when bread and cheese would have sufficed? Why, oh, why had I not written out carefully at least one puppet play? I shivered and shook and desperately tried to invent a play on the spot appropriate to this learned audience. But in the midst of all this confusion, there was a sudden burst of applause. The audience were clapping their hands and looking at me, whereupon I realized that I must have made an introductory speech. Consumed with blushes and prickling with embarrassment, I dived into the curtains, pulled off my coat, and plunged into my village entertainment. I cannot say whether it originated with the philosophers, the professors, the artists, or the more easygoing staff, but the first appearance of the puppets was greeted with a spontaneous laugh. At the end of the first scene, there was no doubt that they all joined together to applaud, and I hope it was not too cynical of me if I laughed a little to hear this intelligentsia applauding the same simple scene which had amused so many children and villagers. Personally, I thought more of them. These clever people were human, after all, and sith it like the company well. And what? Sith it liketh the company well the puppets waxed merry, and did perform all manner of antic. And by my faith, these distinguished knights and their clever ladies laughed right well, the which was the great relief of the nervous showman, who likewise was relieved to find that a collection was in accordance with these early English modes, and that each one of them contributed his dole. For 3 days I rested within those castle walls. Not all the time was spent in junketing, for I made a large poster of the Peep Show announcing performance to take place in the open air theatre of the Chalice Well on Saturday. This poster was fixed to the truck, and, inspired no doubt by the courageous example of the knights of old, I wheeled it round the streets of Glastonbury and Street, singing the while a beautifully decorated Florentine bell. We enjoyed this performance in the Orchard Theatre, the audience seated on grassy amphitheatre, the bright apples around us and the blue heavens above. I scorned the comfortable bed, which the hospitable lady of the castle kindly offered me, and I camped on the lawn, which would have served admirably for croquet or for bowls, but was far too level to accommodate the awkward shape of a reclining human body. So, for the greater part of the nights, I lay listening to the fountains, or I walked the paths of the castle garden, hoping for an encounter with those old hermits, or perhaps Sir Galahad himself. Those 3 days of merrymaking came to an end, and with them I concluded that my first Punch and Judy tour had also come to an end. At the last moment I had happened into the proper culminating adventure. These days at the castle of Chalice Well had set a crown upon the journey. The Peep Show had been thoroughly tested, and I knew now that a simple puppet show could, in these clever modern times, amuse the 3 races of mankind: the vulgar poor race, the vulgar rich, and the other race, which is not concerned with riches, poverty, or vulgarity, the intelligentsia, the highbrows. And another satisfying thing was that I walked out of Glastonbury with £3 and 1 penny, this amount being collected at the 2 performances within the hospitable walls of this enchanted and enchanting castle of Glastonbury. We are on chapter, I think this is the last chapter now, of 24. Nearly there, ladies and gentlemen, nearly there. I drew out of Glastonbury, shook off this nonsense about olden times, and set out to reach the destination in the Cotswolds as soon as I could. On this very modern world to Wells, I was passed by a great many motor cars, which filled the air with petrol and covered me with dust, and so established my existence in the 20th century as real and as a real and horrid fact. And yet, the olden times pulled me back in again in Wells. Here is such a collection of antique monuments, of cloisters, of moats and barns, of Chapter House, Undercroft, Chaingate and Vicar's Close, that my brain reeled and reeled again, especially when a mechanic with a bag of tools on his back walked up to my side and said, "Are you Staddons?" I looked sufficiently bewildered for him to repeat his question in another form. "Is that Staddons?" I found sufficient breath to say, "Eh?" "I say, is it Staddons?" he repeated loudly. If he thought I was deaf, I certainly thought he was mad. There was no sense at all in such a word as Staddens, and I was going to say so when he said, "Are you my brother? Are you my brother's butler?" Yes, he was certainly mad, and I began to wonder how I should answer these two crazy questions. He must know that I'm not his brother, I thought, and I don't believe the brother of a working mechanic in dungarees could possibly possess a butler. He is mad. I must get away, or else humour him gently. We came to a cart standing in the gutter and passed it on opposite sides, he on the path and I in the road. I hid behind the cart and hung back in the hopes that he would forget me and that something else would attract his mad attention. But he waited for me to come round the cart. He even stepped off the pavement and looked round the vehicle to see what was stopping me and if he could help. There was no escape, and we went along together. "What is your name?" he asked. "I thought you were my brother's butler. He's got a show down at Weston, and sometimes he comes here with it. My name is Staddon. I belong to the oldish Punch and Judy family in England, you know." Here his companion pulled his sleeve and began to talk business. It is evident that in talking to me they were being carried away from their work. "Ah, from Alfred," said Mr. Staddon, seeing the sticks. "I thought he might be my brother, you know." "Oh, seeing the sticks, I thought he might..." This other bloke has suddenly turned up, has he? That was a bit weird. "Ah, from Alfred," said Mr. Staddon. "Seeing the sticks, I thought he might be my brother, you know. This is the Punch and Judy, ain't it?" Excuse me. I was all for the half a mo. This sounded promising, and I explained the Peep show to him. "Ah, so where are your swazzles?" Where's your swatchels? Swatchel is a word that I made by swatchel, for that is what I made of the word after several repetitions. He referred to the puppets. I wonder if he means swazzle. I opened the box and pulled some of them out to show him. His companion became very alarmed at this delay, but Mr. Staddon and I were very much interested in one another to bother about him. Why, here was a miraculous meeting of the oldish Punch and Judy with the newest. "Ain't you got a nobbler?" he asked. I was sufficiently educated to know that this meant a collector, and I confessed that I was alone. But I suggested that he should do a show with me in Wells that evening, and if he would, I would offer to split the collection 50-50. Unfortunately, it was impossible. He was only in the town for a job and had to catch the train by 7 o'clock. He would have liked nothing better. He did a show sometimes himself. "Yes," he went on, "all our family are in it. I got a brother at Weston and one at Bournemouth, and my uncle does it in Woking, and he's nearly 80 years old. My father used to do it, and my grandfather and his father before him. Some of our figures are over 100 years old. You can't get figures made nowadays. We make 'em all our own, cut 'em out of deal. But the old ones are made of ash, and when you've got 'em up, my word, you know they're up. We don't use 'em, much too heavy." By this time the companion had lost all patience and literally dragged the amiable and smiling Mr. Staddon away from me down a side street. But as he went, he walked backwards, shouting out directions as to where I could get a good tea cheap. "None of them places where you get 2 bits of thin bread and butter and they charge you 1.9, he shouted, and then disappeared. I followed his directions faithfully and was served with surprisingly large cups of tea and generous slabs of bread and, well, it would be true to say, butter. It was cheap enough and nasty enough, but I felt an honour bound to pay this tribute, at the very least, to this family member of the oldest Punch and Judy family. Not being able to perform with the help of Mr. Staddon, I had no heart for showing at all in Wells. Having come into touch with an ancient puppet man, I could not be expected to waste time over cathedrals or ancient battlements. and I pulled straight through the town, past the hoary old shops and the old-fashioned houses, which fitted well with my pedestrian mood. But the most surprising manifestation of a past age which crossed my path was a schoolboy, or rather the boy's clothes, which were brown velvet, a red tie and a bright purple stockings, finished off with neat black shoes. Surely such a costume could be no accident, but the result, a lingering memory of those times when males were really cockbirds and dressed themselves richly and gaily. I don't know what he means by that, but there we are. 2 miles out of town, on the heights of the Mendips, I pitched camp among the green bracken, under the oak and ash trees, with an immense view over the county to the sea, with the Tor Hill of Glastonbury still in sight, standing strangely prominent against the plain. All next day I travelled over the Mendips without any more adventures than to see the lovely views of valleys and plains, and hilltops covered with the purple and gold of heather gorse. And in the evening I found another good camp, and a friendly farmer who took me into his romantic old kitchen, introduced me to his family, and treated me to new milk. On the Wednesday afternoon I came to Bath, and as I walked through the streets to the centre of the town, I was dimly conscious of being followed by someone, of being stared at rather persistently by a small, dark man. I put my belongings into the yard of the new inn, and as I came out of the gates this man was standing there, his black, beady eyes fixed upon me. He soon introduced himself. He was not another member of the oldest Punch and Judy family, but he was of interest, for he introduced himself as old Professor Hill's Nobbler. He knew all the pitches in Bath, and did I want any help with the show? He guided me to the post office, and then I took him to tea, for I wanted to hear about Professor Hill, now dead, who had been the great Punch and Judy man of Bath. In the tea shop, my new friend became reminiscent and sentimental, but not about Punch and Judy shows. I had a job to keep him on the subject, for it seems that he and his wife had taken tea in this very shop every Saturday night for years, and now his wife had run away with his illusions. By his illusions I soon discovered that he did not mean those abstract visions, what a perfect wife ought to be, but some very real illusions, to wit, his stock and trade as an illusionist, a conjurer. His recollection, so in other words, she ran off with all his magic tricks. His recollections made his nose run, and he sniffed dangerously. It was COVID, and I had to back off quickly. Oh, sorry, it wasn't COVID. I chewed my Bath bun as sympathetically as possible. Then he'd been deserted by a pal. He'd worked Harris, the handcuff king. He'd worked him well on the best pitches, and had been the making of him. Then the handcuff king began to get evening engagements in halls, and my friend never saw him no more. But in good time I was favoured with some biographical details of Professor Hill, and the painful truth is that he used to booze. When we were down at Torquay and Paynton, we used to do 3 shows a day, and he was always drunk at the last show. He made a lot of money. We used to take from £3 to £5 a day at Paynton, but he was clever at it. He used to rehearse in his room at home. He'd got as much as £12 for a show once. Of course, his flashes were printed in gold, all lovely, you know. His tilt was red and white, and his curtains were velvet with tassels, and we used to paint the figures every week with watercolour and gold size. He was going to learn me punch, but I said, "Oh no, none of that for me, too hard work." When you get the bloomin' punch up, seems to weigh pounds. Do you know how he used to make his squeakers? Why, he used to get 2 shillings, beat them out thin, and then cut them to fit the mouth. Beautiful squeakers they was. But he messed about and drank too much. The business went down, and none of his family would carry on with it. This was the sort of inside knowledge I thirsted for, and here and there I caught a grain of interesting technical information. He descanted upon methods of working the show, and incidentally he let fall some direct evidence of the moral tide which is setting in against Punch and Judy drama. "Now you know what you want to do," he said, "when you come to a village, is to go to the parson and get him to give you £1 for doing a show to the school kids. But if you do a show like that for the parson, mind you, leave out the bit about chucking the baby out of the window. They don't like it, especially the Catholic parsons. They say it ain't right to show children a thing like that. And quite right too, because some of them kids, you see, might go home and start practising with a real baby." I exhausted my powers of drawing out this nobbler, and as the conversation came to a standstill, we went about our business, but first agreeing to meet again at 6 o'clock to unite our efforts in a performance. At that hour we were both at the New Inn, and under his direction we trudged down to the quay and set up the theatre. He made me very nervous with his admiration of my bath chair wheels. He'd been looking for such a pair himself, but in all Bath there were no bath chair wheels to be found. He toyed with my wheels, he spun them round, he patted them, he looked at them longingly. He was dark, he was brown, like a gypsy, and I began to wonder what would become of this adventure with a professional nobbler. Would it be bad enough if this stranger disappeared with the collection? It would be bad enough if this stranger disappeared with the collection, but if he carried off my desirable wheels whilst I was performing, I would be in a serious predicament. So I carried through that show under difficulties. If I was not looking for him in the front, I was looking out at the back of the theatre to see if my wheels were still there. But he must have honourable and camaraderie intentions towards me, for in about half an hour he put his head through the back curtains and said, "Don't work too hard. We ain't getting much, only 7pence a penny." Of course, I was mean enough to suspect him of nobbing on his own account, and after doing another scene, I got him to continue the performance while I collected. "Ah, that's it," he said. "Perhaps they'll pay up if they see the workman." He was quite ready to perform. That did not seem to present any difficulty to him, and I was amused to watch his first efforts with the puppets while I went round with the bag. His first 2 puppets simply dashed about the theatre in wild, chaotic manner, carrying on a vehement conversation which seemed to be angry in character, but the words, if there were any, were quite unintelligible. I thought the 6pence which I collected was as much as the scene was worth. I performed again, and he collected again, and we finished up with only 2 shillings, he being very diffident about taking his half of the proceedings. Financially, this passage through Bath was nothing to speak of. I had not seen the Abbey or the Roman baths, nor sat drinking in the waters in the pump room. I had not done that which I ought to have done in Bath, but yet what other person in the world, on his first visit to the town, has been so privileged as to spend a few hours with Professor Hill's nobbler, the man who could find no bath chair wheels in Bath? I was indeed fortunate. I did not think that Bath had so much to offer. It was nearly dark by the time I had packed up and shaken hands with my friend. He left me his name and address on a scrap of card, all mixed up with the names of racehorses and mysterious hieroglyphics. He fixed a mesmeric stare upon me with his piercing black eyes, and said that he had not started on another business. Had he not started on another business, he would have come along with me. "I would have stuck to you," he said. "You wouldn't have had to get rid of me." He confessed that he was a gypsy, that he had been brought up in tents, and that he liked nothing better. It was quite dark before I got out of Bath. I had no lamp on my truck, and I walked in fear of the police. Dark as it was, Bath never looked more lovely. It was a blue fairy mist twinkling with golden lights, its elegant spires and chimney stacks, its roofs and telegraph poles silhouetted against the dark downs and a glowing night sky. But it was dark, and it grew darker. I was longing to pitch my tent, but the villadom of Bath seemed to extend for miles. I pulled up hills and round corners and halted once to explore the ground, round a half-built house for a camp. I fell over the boards and bricks and stepped into the mortar, but could not find a level space. After pulling up a stiff hill, I seemed to come into the proper country and at last reached a real meadow gate and a large haystack looming over a hedge. I was not long getting inside this meadow, in burying myself comfortably in the hay and in falling asleep somewhere high above the twinkling lights of Bath. This was the last adventure. All next day I pulled over the lonely Cotswold hills, travelling about 20 miles, and singing songs in praise of camping and tramping and the stirring life we jolly showmen lead. I spent another day in getting to Stroud, and that night a September frost stiffened the little tent, chilling me in the early hours. The next morning found us all back at the starting point and in all good going order. The tent was torn, the elegant tent poles broken and replaced by hazel sticks, the curtains of the show faded and the paint scratched. But the showman, in a sufficient vigorous state of health to remedy those superficial ailments. There was a credit of balance of £5. A wealth of experience had been gained, 3 new puppets, various properties, some press notices, innumerable gags, and a complete new play had been added to the show. And in the knapsack were half a brown loaf, some tomatoes, a piece of cheese, a packet of tea, and a £1/4 pound of butter. All good commodities. The end. That's it. That's the end. He got to the start and raring to go, I guess, for the next season. So that's the Peep Show. Walter Wilkinson. How about that? That was thrilling, wasn't it? Lovely to get to the end of that. I hope you enjoyed it. So it's 10:02, so that's a good time to finish off. But what will we do for next week? I think we'll take tomorrow off, if that's all right with everybody, it being Friday. And we'll commence. Now we could, this is the choice. What choice have we got? We've got another James Hissey, John James Hissey, James John Hissey, whatever his name is. Lots of picturesque stuff. We don't want to do another Peep Show straight after that. What's that one? We have got another Tickner Edwards here called Neighbourhood. And I'll tell you what this is about. This is about 300 pages. This is A Year's Life in and About an English Village by Tickner Edwards, with 8 illustrations. And it goes through the year, January to December. And I've no idea what it's like, but there's a nice photograph there in there. Show you that for the sake of photograph with a horse. Yeah, it's difficult to say, but I'll have a little read of that and see if that's worth pursuing. There is another one by. Do you remember we did The Lure of Sussex? We did The Lure of Sussex by R. Thurston Hopkins, and I did buy another book by him, which is called I just read it. Sussex pilgrimages. So this is, it's got the sort of places around Sussex. Camping in Downland, Shoreham and the Coombs, various Stenning and Chantonbury. I guess this is people he meets, that sort of thing. Same sort of nonsense that we've had. Just look at, and just sorry, I haven't really got into that. Then I've got another one by somebody else called something the Weald, where he goes on a journey in the Weald. But I forgot to bring that in. It's in the other room. But maybe we'll start with Tickner Edwards. There we go. Says Lee Lawson. We can give Tickner. It looks like a good long one. Says Anne NH. So we could give that a go. And if it's no good, we'll find something else. But in the meantime, let's think of some other things. That was fun and all useful information. Thanks for that. Says Andrew Norris. Fantastic. So there we are. Now, don't forget to get your tank tops on for the weekend. It is National Tank Top Day on Saturday. And it's No Sleeve Day on Sunday. I may have made that up. I may have made it all up. So there we go. So that's that. I was looking at a book. I was going to offer to read one of my own books, but I noticed that it still had corrections to be typed up, so I can't read that. Punch and Judy Staddon. Oh, right. Is that the family? The Staddon family in the 20th century. Hey, let's have a look at this. Look at that. There they are. This postcard by Chris Somerville, dated 1926, but the photograph was probably taken a year or two earlier. The punchman is Bert Staddon. Well, I'm blowed. Look at that. How about that? Bert Staddon Jr. is performing on a bleak day, early spring. The picture is from 1950s.
That's the way to do it.
Good heavens. And this is a portable show of Bert Staddon III. Bert Staddon does wheels. So there we are. He got his wheels in the end. Oh no, that was the Nobbler bloke. That's amazing, yeah. Fantastic. Well done, Julia, for finding that. Punch and Judy on the web. Huh. Lots of... I didn't realise there was quite so much. Anyway, there we are. Interesting stuff. You can spend hours on that. Thanks for the link. Thanks to Linda for the link. Oh, well done, Linda. Yes, because you can't... That's it. Julia has to put them up because obviously they get taken away. Brilliant. Superb. Anyway, we've got a new book. Keep this going. I'll get in touch with the thing. If you think that's a good idea to try and get some interesting... If there's some more modern books that we could do, or certainly read extracts from or something, if you're interested in that, just let me know. And we'll see if we can't get in with some publishers. Would be good, wouldn't it? Especially travelling and on heritage, but modern versions of it. It would be interesting. Or even they might have reprints of some of these old books that we have yet to discover. That would be nice too. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. Does anybody remember the Punch and Judy man in Eastbourne, says Sensible Paul, on his Harley Davidson? I used to know, I'll tell you who I used to work with, Ray Sparks. And he was a Punch and Judy man. I don't know whether he had a Harley Davidson. He came from Eastbourne. Jackie was his wife. She ran an agency. She volunteers on the... what's the Heritage Railway at Tunbridge Wells? The Spa Valley. Yeah, I wonder if that's right. He had lots of hair. He's a biggish bloke, glasses. But I can imagine he had a Harley Davidson. I wonder if that's the same bloke. Ray Sparks. I wonder if he's got... hang on, let me just before we go, let me just see if... Where's my keyboard? I used to work with them a lot, actually, back in the day. Ray Sparks, Punch and Judy. Here we go. Professor Ray Sparks. There we go. Is that the guy? That seems right, says Sensible Paul. I haven't seen him for probably 20 years. So he looks a little bit older than I used to know him. Gosh, isn't that funny? That's how I remember him. With all that hair and stuff. That's how I remember him. Anyway, there we go. I don't suppose they're doing very much at the moment, sadly, unless they're doing it. He used to do magic as well, and balloons and all of that. And I used to, you know, entertain at those events that we used to do all around Sussex. Anyway, there we go. Superb. Good fun. Take care. Nice to see you all. Thanks for joining me. And I will catch up with you next week. There'll be a Vogue show tomorrow night, though, so I get most of tomorrow off, don't I? I've got to create a video, of course, for Saturday. Let's hope the weather is going to be nice. I'd like to get out and do something. In the meantime, thanks very much for watching. Take care and have a pleasant evening. Bye for now.